Welcome, everybody, to the Team Wyoming Huddle. As you join us today, we'll get started in a couple of minutes, but as you're joining us, please let us know where you're coming from. Scan the QR code or go to menti.com and enter that code that you see there on the screen. Just let us know where you're coming from today. Welcome. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. Welcome, everybody, to the Team Wyoming Huddle. As you join us today, please scan the QR code on your screen and enter that code, or you can go to menti.com and enter that code. Just let us know where you're coming from today. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. We'll get going here in a couple of minutes, but as you're joining us on the Team Wyoming Huddle today, just let us know what county you're joining us from in Wyoming. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. It's exciting to see where everybody is coming from. We'll get going in about 1 minute. But as you roll in, please scan the QR code on your screen, enter that code at menti.com, and let us know where you are from. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Team Wyoming Huddle. My name is Sarah Fitzgerald. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at the Wyoming Business Council, and I'm joined today by Brandon Marshall.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I am, again, Brandon Marshall. I'm the Services Director here at the Wyoming Business Council.
And if you're wondering what the heck the Business Council is, what we do, you're not alone. We're Wyoming's economic development agency, and all that means is that it's our job to build and grow and improve Wyoming's economy so that people can live the life they really want to here in Wyoming.
Sarah, I'd like to say I think it's to help people sort of put it into here's your life. If you're a business that wants to grow, if you're an entrepreneur wanting to get something going, you've got a great idea. If you're just a community that sees some opportunity and wants to get going, but you also see at the same time that maybe that problem is bigger than just one person, or we could do this except for this. We're here to help you get through the accepts, whether it's business, community, all those different things.
That's right. That's right. Before we go any further, Brandon, I just want to take a minute because we have we have reached almost 1,000 people who we've heard from over the summer, and we have over 700 people on this huddle today. Have you seen anything like this ever before in your life, Brandon?
Sarah, it might just be my age and my my emotion. But dude, this is so much cooler than the practice session. Sitting here at the very beginning, watching people pop on and fill out the poll and watching the chart jump. Gosh, it thrills my soul. These are my people. They're your people too. They're all of our people, but these are the people that give a crap. Pardon my French. My grandma used to say crap all the time, and she was a very pious lady, so it's fine. You can say crap. But yeah, no, these are the people that give a crap. It's super exciting. Thank you all for joining us. So
Yes, thank you. And Brandon, you've been around for a while and you grew up in Wyoming, right? How did you get to the Business Council?
yeah. So yeah, I grew up just an hour north of Cheyenne here in LaGrange. My dad is a contractor out there, kind of forever. So was my grandpa. Just different things that, through life there. I ended up at the Wyoming Business Council because I ended up at LCCC. Um, I through all kinds of different, I guess, kind of connections and my first boss here at the Business Council was our business recruiting manager, and she was good friends with my boss at LCCC, and that was actually sort of my connection into this. But I've always kind of been the real reason outside of just sort of these connections. Even growing up, my friends and I don't, we didn't call ourselves economic development nerds because nobody knows what economic development is, um, including us sometimes. And but we would talk about how we could make LaGrange better. What would happen? Well, like just ideas of businesses and what could our main street be beautiful. And we were always sort of nerds about this. But the one thing, my best friend and I were always like super Wyoming fans, not sports necessarily, just like superiority complex. We started a thing in high school, a pack for our civics class called the Coalition for Nebraskan Annihilation, and then sort of got to become known, I guess, in high school as Mr. Wyoming. Anyway, that all led sort of to the business council and again to those connections, and people are like, Brandon is Mr. Wyoming, and I hope you are all too. I think you are. That's why you're here. Sorry, I'm gonna keep freaking out about how many people are joining us. I think it's, yeah, that's just super cool. So anyway,
It's huge. It is huge. I think you're Mr. Wyoming, Brandon, and I think we're probably joined by hundreds of other Mr. Wyomings here
yeah,
today. But Brandon, I have a similar story. You know, I grew up here in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and like a lot of people, when it came time to start my career, I had to look elsewhere. I ended up in Houston, Texas, working in energy and in finance, and loved that world, you know, loved that fast pace. And I'm sure all the business people we have on the call will understand that that's a fun world to be a part of. But Houston, Texas was never home for me. You know, I'm from Wyoming. I'm fourth generation Wyomingite, and I always wanted to come home. But that the moment when that really became clear, I actually remember the date because it was my mom's birthday. On January 4th, she called me and let me know that we had lost my uncle that morning to a heart attack. And you know, my uncle was only a couple years older than my dad. His kids were about the same age as me and my brother, and it was that day when I realized, you know what, life is way too short to spend it away from home. And that's the day that my journey back to Wyoming started. And I'm just so lucky because my journey led me to the Business Council, and I get to spend every single day waking up, working with the team to try and make it so that people don't have to face that choice, you know, between home and really fulfilling their potential. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. We are going to hear from the Business Council CEO, Josh Durrell, really about where we've come. We've come a long way at the Business Council, where we're at and where we're heading. And then we'll turn it over to our field director, Heather Tupper, who will share with us what we're hearing from listening sessions around the state. We've been crisscrossing the state in every town and every community, and we've got more to come, but lots of communities so far in the state of Wyoming. And so she's going to tell us what we're hearing so far. And then what I'm most excited for is to turn it over to all of you because we're going to go through some live polling. And that's really going to be your chance to tell us at the Business Council how are you experiencing your economy now? What do you want for the future? What do you want for your kids to experience in the future? So please take a moment right now. If you haven't already, scan your QR code. or go to menti.com and enter the code 78781886. That link is also in the chat, so you can just click that. But before we get into those slides, I want to take a moment to ground us in something that in where we're how we're kind of all feeling about the economy today. So when you registered, we asked you a question, which was, what's one word you would use to describe Wyoming's economy? And here's what she said. Brandon, that juxtaposition between potential and stagnant, I think just says it all to me.
Well, I think this is our opportunity. This is our, I don't know, our point in the road in Wyoming, right? We can come from the top of this graphic and we're gonna, we're acknowledging we have some things that we gotta fix. We gotta work on some things. And that big word stagnant really points out to you. But then I hope that bigger word potential and opportunity and energy below there really speaks out to people, because that's what we gotta be able to take to fix those things up on the top of the buffalo.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's turn to the future now. That's how we feel about right now. Now let's talk about what we want the future of Wyoming to look like. This is what we're really here for today. So, um, scan that QR code, go to that link in the chat, go to menti.com, and answer this question. What are 1 to 3 words you hope describes Wyoming's economy in 10 years? 10 years is a long time. 10 years is I'm not going to share how old I will be in 10 years, but I will share how old my oldest daughter will be. She will be 14. She's 4 years old right now. That's kids keep track of time for us, Brandon.
See, and for me, it's just gray hair and forgetfulness. 10 years, I'm signing up for AARP officially. So
So in 10 years, what do you hope Wyoming's economy looks like?
there's a ton of thoughts coming in here. Thank you, everyone, for
Yeah.
playing ball on those. A lot of comments in the section too. In the
Yeah.
comments. Awesome.
Strong. Yes. Cohesive. All right. We're almost there, guys. All right. Okay, let's see what we say. All right. Oh, well, there's a lot of words. That is great. Diverse, growing, thriving, diversified, strong, resilient. It's a good one. Stable, vibrant. Those are all great words, and I hope that we do have a growing and thriving and resilient and innovative economy too. And I know that Josh Durrell hopes for those things in the future as well. And I think he's got some thoughts about how we actually might get there. So let's hear from Josh about where we've been at the Business Council, where we are, and kind of where we're heading. Josh?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Brandon, for opening things up. And I can't wait for the polling either. I think it's going to be really exciting to hear what everyone has to say. I think there's a lot of excitement around the economy, which is kind of a funny thing to say, but the economy is center stage, and it should be. And there are currently 460 people in this particular webinar. We had over 700 register. And we've talked to over 1,000 this summer alone about the things that we're going to talk about today, which is pretty darn exciting. And frankly, it's a little bit mind blowing. I think Brandon Marshall kind of described the feeling that we're all feeling about how important the economy is to us every day is now being felt across the state and really bringing people out to talk about it. And the interesting thing is, as I graduated college at the University of Wyoming, and I got an engineering degree, and almost all of my classmates were leaving the state to find their careers and to build their lives. And a couple things for me were really important. And one was to stay in the state. And I wanted to stay in the state, but I also wanted to make sure that I was sort of maximizing my opportunities and my potential in the world. And over the years, I've had a number of different roles, whether that be with small companies, with large companies, with Wyoming companies, with global companies. And I've been able to make my home in Wyoming, and I feel very lucky to be able to do that. And in 2019, late 2019, an opportunity came up to maybe try to lead the business council. So I went through the interview process. And the reason I did that is because I felt like this could be a really interesting and good opportunity to not just worry about my career, but potentially build the opportunities for others and be able to take my purpose and live it on a broader scale and do it in the state that I loved. And so that maybe people didn't have to be as lucky. Maybe my four kids at the time didn't have to be as lucky to build their lives here. And when I stepped into this role, I also believed in two things that I think are really, really important. And that is one, I believe that there's extraordinary opportunity in Wyoming. And I also believe that the Wyoming Business Council was in a perfect position to play an important role to really turn that potential into opportunity for Wyoming and Wyomingites like me. And really, for more than 2 decades, that's what the organization has been doing. And we happen to be lucky enough to have someone on the call, Brandon Marshall. He doesn't look like he's very old because he started working here when he was about 7, I guess. But he's been around for 23 years of those, 26 years. And I think it really, there's been a lot done in the state by the Business Council, and uh, and the thing that we realize we need to do is get better at helping businesses grow, helping communities solve their hard problems, and really turning our advantages into opportunities that people can build their lives around. And there's a lot here in Wyoming worth building on. I think it's pretty obvious when you have nearly 500 people now joining us for their lunch hour. There's a lot of potential out there. And the businesses that have benefited from the work that we've done and that state-supported infrastructure have created more than 5,000 jobs over the course of our time. And those are primary jobs, so it's spread out and created more after that. And then recently, our Wyoming Venture Capital program has attracted $164 million of investment into businesses in our state. And that's created more than 400 jobs. And those are high skill occupations where we compete every day to keep and attract talent. And some of you will know that we've been pretty honest about the amount of people that leave our state because of the opportunities. It's 2 out of every 3 by the time they're in their 30s. And with programs like these, that gives people opportunities to stay here. And we've helped communities build infrastructure. We've helped businesses navigate the barriers that are slowing them down. We've helped people solve problems that they didn't think they could solve on their own. And we've proven that we can execute complex work responsibly. Our audit recently really showed that in the public, happy to be transparent and happy to show how well we run and how clean our audit findings were is really important to us. But I think it's really important to note while we've been in the news and we have been the people that maybe get the headlines, we're not actually the ones that build the Wyoming economy. It's folks like you and all of people in Wyoming are building the Wyoming economy. Business owners were hiring people, workers were showing up and learning new skills, and teachers and colleges prepared the next generation. And people took risks, and leaders that at a local level, at a state level, they made hard decisions and they put themselves out there. In a lot of cases, communities invested in themselves, and we've just been a piece of a much bigger story. Happy to be that piece. It's a privilege that we take seriously, but it's just a piece. And even with all of that was going on and the work that we were doing to kind of leverage that and create a positive ROI, we really had to take a hard look at Wyoming and know that it wasn't enough. There were still major challenges that were brewing. Young people are struggling to have enough opportunity here. That's why we see the outmigration we see. Wages are not keeping pace with the rising costs. Employers are running into workforce and housing constraints at every turn. Other states are also competing against us to try to take what we have and not just our talent that's leaving. And we saw in the data that conversations across the state supported then people could feel the challenges that we saw in front of us. Communities are feeling it, businesses are feeling it, families are feeling it. And it wasn't that everything was broken. It's just that the scale of the challenges and how connected they were required more than like the small interactions that we were having, the small investments that we were making. We could point to those accomplishments and still look honestly at us and say, it's not enough yet. And I think that's really important for us to understand is that we have done some really great things as a state, but I think there's so much more potential out there. And so as a result, we started pushing. We started pushing pretty hard, and we proposed a more ambitious budget. We began changing our programs so that they focus more directly on the problem that they should be solving and the outcomes that they could get. We started being really honest about the economic challenges that Wyoming faces, and we started bringing more people into the conversation because something else was becoming obvious. It's that not just one organization was going to solve these challenges alone. And we thought we understood the direction that Wyoming needed us to move in. In fact, in a survey that we did last year, we learned that 73% of Wyoming residents wanted more business and people so that our economy was stronger. And that poll, what it did is it emboldened us to show those in power that Wyoming wanted to step into the future, not shrink into the past. So we had some discussions internally and we started to talk to people that we really trusted about bringing this frustrated optimism into the spotlight. And we heard people say, man, you're taking a big risk by speaking truth to power. You might want to keep your head down this year. And that was a pretty interesting decision point for us. We felt like an enormous sense of responsibility to represent what Wyoming really wanted, to represent those 73% of people, and to represent the 9 out of 10 that said we should work to keep our youth in the state. And we thought that's not just a responsibility, it is our obligation to the people of the state. And so we chose to be honest. We chose to present a bold view of what could be. And when we brought that to the people in power, we found a huge gap between what Wyoming wants and deserves and their ideology. Most of you probably know that during the legislative session, some serious questions were raised about the Business Council, our direction, our priorities, and ultimately our future. There were moments when, heck, I wondered, like, had we misread Wyoming? Were we working on things that people really felt were urgent and that people wanted us to work on? Were we moving in the right direction, but just not with enough people? And those are difficult questions, and they're fair questions. I think as an organization that exists to serve Wyoming, Wyoming should challenge us. We should be challenged by legislators. We should be challenged by folks that are working in the communities because it's not our job to be defensive about it. It's our job to listen and understand. And what I think we're seeing and what happened through all of that challenge was that you showed up. Businesses spoke up, communities spoke up, people who believed in this work and believed that it mattered the most had their voices heard. But if you were listening closely, it wasn't about saving the business council or protecting the business council. That would have been too easy. I think the message that we heard was much more important than that. It wasn't about an agency. It was about the work that we're doing. And people were saying, you're doing work that matters. You're speaking truth to power. You're putting yourself at risk as an organization. Keep doing it. But they did say they wanted us to do it bigger, better, and louder. Do it closer to the people you serve. Be clear about what you're responsible for and show people where the value is. They wanted us to explain the choices we're making and make sure that we were listening before we were leaping. And that changed something. And I think it's really important. Our commitment to the businesses didn't change. Our commitment to communities didn't change. And our belief in the potential didn't change. But we're adding something to our process that is changing us. It's how we're going to build our strategy moving forward. Before deciding what we're going to be doing next, we needed to understand something much more fundamental. What kind of economic future do Wyoming people actually want? What's getting in the way? What makes a good life possible here? What do businesses need? What are communities struggling with? And what do we want to protect as we move forward? Maybe not most importantly, but something we care a lot about is where does the Wyoming Business Council fit in all of that? And where don't we fit? So we began listening. We spent the summer going where people already were. Those are listening sessions. Many people have come out for those listening sessions. We've had a lot of coffee. We love coffee at the Business Council. We've had a lot of conversations around it. We've had lunches with people, community meetings, conversations with business owners, conversations in parks with moms and kids, local officials, young professionals, educators, entrepreneurs, and people who would never describe themselves as economic development stakeholders. We've now participated in over 32 listening sessions and structured feedback, and the voices across Wyoming have been heard. And what mattered wasn't simply collecting more, it was hearing those ideas emerge from different people in different places and really bringing that into what we're doing today. But it doesn't matter if we just go out there and collect and listen and don't do anything about it. I think what you've already shared with us is being carried to our board meetings. It's being carried to the Joint Minerals Committee and the Joint Appropriations Committee as we meet with them this summer, and we'll meet again with them at the end of the month. It's factoring into the policies that we're making and the strategy we're building. It's it's also factoring into the role we should play with communities and businesses across the state. Now, I will say this. Listening doesn't mean that we're going to do everything that everyone asks us to do. That's not leadership either. Leadership still requires making hard choices. But those choices should begin with a much clearer understanding of the people we're here to serve. And I think listening actually increases our responsibility because once people tell you what they're experiencing, you have an obligation to do something about it. It doesn't relieve us of the responsibility to lead, it makes it heavier. We have to speak truth to power and potentially put ourselves in the crosshairs so that your voices can be heard. And frankly, that's what's most important to us. Standing up, speaking the truth, making sure that your voice is carried forward, just like we did last year with the poll that we did. That poll actually got us in a little bit more trouble than you might think. A leader of the legislature said to me, "Gosh, Josh, I sure wish you hadn't done that poll." And I thought to myself, why not? Why not? These are the voices of the people of Wyoming. Policymakers and us have an obligation to take those voices forward and do the right things. And that's what brings us here today. For the last several months, we've been listening. We have been listening to folks out all across the state. We're going to be in 3 more places in the next couple of weeks. And one of the things that we've been working to do is kind of coalesce all of that information for today to share it back with you. And to do that is Heather Tupper, who leads our regional director team. Our regional directors live in Wyoming communities. They work alongside those communities every day. They've helped connect hundreds of people into individual conversations into this statewide picture. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather and ask you, Heather, what's Wyoming telling us?
Thanks, Josh. So again, I'm Heather. I am the lead for our regional director team. I grew up in Laramie. I graduated from UW, and after a few stops along the way, I found the Business Council team where I have actually been now for over 16 years. I have to agree with what Brandon said earlier. This has been an exciting, sometimes trying year, but today makes me super proud to be part of Team Wyoming. I'm based in Cheyenne. I support the work that our regional team does across Wyoming. Like Josh said, they're our boots on the ground, our local connectors. I'm pretty lucky in my position. I get a chance to add capacity where it might be needed. And that means I get to spend time in communities all around the state. I've had a chance to be in the room for a lot of the great conversations that we've had this summer. And I want to tell you all a little bit more about what we've been hearing. As you heard from Josh, since early June, the Business Council team has participated in more than 30 engagements covering most counties around the state. Through organized lunch sessions, street fairs, and even picnic shelter chats, we heard from you as entrepreneurs, business leaders, elected and aspiring to be elected officials, educators, nonprofits, economic development partners, agency partners, parents, students, retirees. You showed up and you came willing to share. We asked about the Wyoming that you see today, and we ask you about the Wyoming that you envision for our future. Though told through many points of view, the story is very similar. We know there isn't one universal Wyoming experience, but we see several themes carried out throughout our conversations. Your voices are actually pretty clear. What you see here are not recommendations that we are presenting to you. These are patterns that we heard and that we want to reflect back to you today. One thing that really stood out is the tension between the potential people see and the opportunity they actually experience. This runs through almost everything we heard. So let's take a closer look at these themes. Starting with, economic development is personal. People want the opportunity to build a good life here. A good life isn't just about a good job and wage, even though those are important. It's also about career advancement and mobility, starting or growing a business, connection to a network, access to services, things that we all consider when we think about our future here. Wyoming sees assets, strengths, and possibility, but many aren't yet experiencing these things and an accessible opportunity in their own lives. And we have heard often that a good job does not solve the whole equation. Many young professionals express this frustration. While they may find a job in their chosen field, if there's only one employer, maybe wages are not keeping up with rent, and there's no next step up the ladder in sight, they may have to make a choice to leave for a place that offers a more complete experience. So a good job doesn't solve the equation by itself. Many quality of life issues come together in one interconnected economic infrastructure system. Through all of our sessions, housing has been the most consistently reinforced constraint that we heard. Employers tell us they can have a job available, but struggle to recruit because the workers can't find anywhere to live. Rent rates, if a rental is available, reflect those of larger cities, but wages don't always. Even with housing and solid employment, families that struggle with childcare or healthcare may still find it hard to be successful in a community. Young professionals tell us they want career opportunities as well as amenities, peer relationships, and feeling of being connected to their communities. Communities may have development opportunities, but lack the infrastructure or capacity to act on them. All of these influence whether economic development actually works. A place where people want to live is a place where an economy can naturally grow. And Wyomingites want growth, but growth that works for Wyoming. We value growth that is visible locally and allows our communities to keep the identity and what makes them unique. We heard appetite for more businesses, entrepreneurship, new industries, and diversification. You want strong local economies. Our poll from last year showed that too. People also deeply care about community character, quality of life, our heritage, and local identity. People are looking for growth that communities can absorb. Two things can be true at once. These themes are not necessarily in conflict. This is not a growth versus a no growth answer. The big question here is, how do we create more opportunity without losing what makes this a place we want to live? How do we make this Wyoming worth choosing? Because we've heard from you when you've told us that talent is ultimately about choice. The question has shifted from how do we keep people from leaving to how do we position Wyoming as a choice that is easy for people to make? Younger residents are clear that they care about the state, but caring isn't always what makes staying possible. People need career pathways and multiple opportunities, competitive wages, attainable housing, services and amenities, professional and social connections, and a sense that they can contribute to their community. People leaving is not inherently a failure. The question is, can Wyoming be the place that people choose to build their future, whether they choose to stay today, come home later, or move here for the first time? And there's one more pattern that was pretty clear. No one can solve this alone. Communities want a partner that can help them get things done. But these challenges cross organizational boundaries. Communities need trusted partnership to help grow capacity, make connections, and offer expertise. They also value local ownership of problem and solutions. People have described needing help navigating programs, understanding complex markets, evaluating companies, connecting resources, planning infrastructure, aligning employers and education, and preparing for major development. One third thing that we did hear often is that challenges don't fit neatly inside of an organizational scope. Housing is everyone's problem. Workforce is more than an employer problem. Childcare isn't just a family problem. Community vitality isn't just a local government problem. Economic development is an interconnected network. People are ready to move beyond convening and start working towards coordinated action. Communities want to own their futures, and different people and organizations have different roles. All right, so let's recap and summarize all that before we move on. Wyoming's challenge is converting potential into accessible opportunity. Stepping back from the hundreds of conversations, here's how these themes are emerging. People aren't primarily defining economic success through GDP, investment totals, or even jobs alone. They're talking about competitive wages, career choices, housing, healthcare, childcare, business opportunities, infrastructure, amenities, entrepreneurship, and being able to stay connected to family and community. And the challenges standing between where we are and where we want to go are all interconnected. And it's just not for one organization to solve alone. Wyomingites want more opportunity, but they want to protect what makes this state worth choosing. Wyoming has tremendous potential, opportunities, outcomes that people care about. Those are the patterns we believe we've heard, but there's a much more important question. The reason we invited you all here today is to ask, do you see Wyoming the same way? Did we hear you right? I'm going to turn it back to Sarah, Brandon, and Josh because now we want to hear more.
Well, thanks for that, Heather. And again, I just want to reinforce how much we've heard and say thank you to all of those folks who were able to come out or join us in community events to let us know really how they're feeling about Wyoming's economy so far in our in-person events. And now we get to learn from all of you who are here today. This is the part I've been looking forward to. So, if you haven't already, use your phone to scan the QR code on your screen or visit menti.com and enter that code. There's also a link in the chat to click. But get ready because we're going to do a bunch of questions here. All right. Shall we, gentlemen? All right. So, first, we really just want to introduce all of us to one another. So, tell us which of these best describes you? Are you a community member? Are you a business owner? Tell us who you are.
There's good for everybody also to remember there. Your perfect choice may not be there, but go ahead and tell us in the chat if it's not there and do pick that other on this particular question. But same principle applies on a lot of these next ones too. So.
Yeah,
It's like we
already almost two-thirds of the folks have responded, so we're climbing there. That's good.
it's like we've got a lot of diversity in our representation here. We're hearing from all walks of life here today. It's very exciting.
That's super exciting, Sarah, and I think that's a really it's something we should sort of not just celebrate, but also realize this is what's going to make it work. If we sit in our own little silos and just listen to folks like you and me, we're going to get a very small perspective, but this is really giving us a good view of Wyoming.
Really exciting. All right. Okay. We've got most people have been able to weigh in, and this is really good. I'm super happy that so many people have been able to join us here today.
Hey, are we allowed to cheer for different groups on here, Sarah? Maybe Josh. I don't know who's like, but way to go, community members, businesses, and employees for outpacing state government. You're killing it. This is changing my entire perception of everything we've ever done in the
Great.
government. Killing it. Nice work.
Good. All right. Well, with that, let's move on to our next poll. And this is where we'll actually get into the meat of the conversation today. So, first, we really would just want to see compared to what we've heard across the state, what you just heard about from Heather, based on what you've heard today, how well does the statewide story we just shared reflect what you individually see and experience in Wyoming? You can pick very well, mostly well, all the way down to not at all.
This one can be a little bit challenging, Sarah. And here's kind of the way I'm thinking about this. It's sort of like as you were hearing what others have said, did that resonate and make you think, yeah, that's exactly how I feel? Or did it make you feel like maybe, or did you say, gosh, maybe I'm not living in the same place, right? Like that's kind of how you could look at this question.
Yeah, this is really important because we have done our best to reach pockets of people who might not, show up to a government event or, come to a committee meeting or any of those sort of like torturous venues. Um, but but so we really just want to capture as many voices as we possibly can because we're here to serve the whole state of Wyoming. 9 seconds left. Get those answers in. All right. Okay, looks like what we've heard from across the state in on our in-person events looks like it's generally capturing what people here are saying, but a few of you say somewhat, kind of not, and some of you don't say not very well, and so that's what today is about, is to add your voice to the conversation. So with that, let's get to it. So when you're answering this question, I really want you to just think about your experience. So this is you as an individual. Which of these statements about Wyoming's economy feels most true to you?
Thank you for the operator of the slides, Chris, for zooming in for those of us that will be eligible to join the AARP in 10 years.
And for those of us who have already probably joined, also thank you. But
Yeah.
this one's really interesting. So, Sarah, you're an economist, and we're talking about feelings.
Economists have feelings too, Josh. It's a
Oh, okay,
little
okay.
known fact. I know, I know. But you know what? The when it comes right down to it, when you say economy, gosh, that just feels like something that's like outside of you, but we know that it really affects everybody on an individual basis. I mean, the three of us have been sharing our stories of Wyoming's economy already so far in this call, and it's not this kind of esoteric thing that sometimes people think of.
Yeah. Yeah, and when it comes right down to it, our feelings drive us and we justify those with the economy and facts, right? So I think we have to kind of lean in and be okay with that. So
Right. That's right. Okay, let's see what the votes are. Hi. Oh, all right, so 22%, the winner, we've got a tie. We've got a tie. 22%, a tie. We have good people and resources, but we often don't work together. And then what's that other 22% there? Wyoming needs more economic and career choices to build a stronger future. Both are so true in my experience. All right. Okay, moving on. Now this is where we get to some challenges. What is really stopping you from living a life that feel really proud of in Wyoming? Which of these most affects your ability to build the life you want in Wyoming? You can pick three of these. Brandon, your life in Wyoming started in LaGrange. What was it like growing up in LaGrange?
Well, superb and superior to all the rest of your experiences, I'm quite sure. That was at least how we grew up. LaGrange is a super interesting place to grow up, but Oddly, LaGrange maybe a little bit outside of the mineral economy, but boy, were we affected by Wyoming. I remember growing up. LaGrange used to have a K-12 school like everybody else. I remember that closing purely for budget reasons in the early 90s, and all those little tensions of ripping a community apart with something like that. I will say, because again, we were Superior, well, we grew up Superior and maybe just have a little something special. Grange has actually done pretty good over the last several years. But man, small towns, just so proud. I don't know. I'm always going to be a small town guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And LaGrange produced Mr. Wyoming, so like good for LaGrange.
it did. It produced Mr. Wyoming. Yeah.
All
And only
right.
six
Sure.
miles from Nebraska. That's what the accomplishment is. We were so close we could smell it. But
I'm glad that you still are working on that pack, Brandon. That's good to hear.
yeah, yeah. It's never stopped. There's not a lot of dark money in it or any money, but we can work on it.
Uh,
All right. Okay, you guys. So, all right. Rising costs without enough growth in income. We hear that all the time. It's the squeeze between, a bag of chips costs like $7 now. And not to mention if you're trying to buy a darn house in Wyoming anywhere. But our income is not keeping up. And we see that backed up by data. Our median income just has not risen like the states around us has, and that's in part due to the types of jobs that we have in Wyoming compared to other states around us. We're just sort of not keeping up with them. So there's things to do there. That's followed by healthcare is difficult to access and afford. We also hear that all the time, as well as not enough good jobs or career paths. I've experienced that personally, and I hear that all the time, that optionality frustration there. Okay, moving on. So, what'll happen if we don't address these? This is really, we're getting even more into those economic feelings, let's call it now, Josh. If the challenges you identified aren't addressed, what is the biggest consequence for you? What will happen? Will you feel frustrated? Will you feel stuck? Will you even have to consider leaving Wyoming? Or maybe it won't affect you. Well, we've got LaGrange covered. Josh is from another cool place in Wyoming called Rawlins.
I am, yeah. I got to grow up in Rollins. My dad was a coal miner in Hannah. He worked there from the mid 70s, and there were some challenging times there in the 80s where he didn't work there for a few years, but was able to go back to the mines and work on them until really the day they got fully reclaimed and all buttoned up. And but Rollins as a kid was a great place to grow up. I still love the wide open spaces, being able to be in the middle of nowhere, and I know this sounds a little crazy, but I love being out in the sagebrush walking around, especially if I get a chance to hunt antelope. So, yeah, Rollins was a great place to be a kid. It really was.
Yeah. Yeah, sagebrush. Sagebrush is great if you don't have allergies.
Sarah,
True.
in our next section, in our next question, if we have time, you have to tell us what it was like to grow up in the big city. That's always been the mystery to
No,
me.
I'm so chic and big city kid here. Yeah. All right, but before we get to that, let's see. Okay, what will happen? Wow, okay. So 30% of you say that if we don't address that challenge that you chose as your first one, you'll have to seriously consider leaving Wyoming. Because that's a big deal. That's a big deal. These economic challenges are not something that you read about in the paper or something that I don't know who reads the paper anymore. I do. I get it delivered every day. But it's not just something that you hear about, it's something that affects you personally. And right behind that is I won't be able to see a bright future for my kids here. That's maybe even more important, um, depending on where you are in your life. Um, or it might become harder for you to support yourself or your family. Um, this is all really, really important impacts. If we don't solve this, guys, we're in big trouble. And we hear this. This is not just what we hear on the call. This is what we hear everywhere across the state. This is a big deal. Okay, so we got to change it. So how do we do that? We want to hear from you. If Wyoming could make meaningful progress on just one of these first, which should it be? That doesn't mean that we won't work on all of these, but it does mean that we've got to pick one first. And so we've got a few options there. First is make Wyoming a more competitive place to live and work. So that means tackling things like housing and healthcare and childcare. Should we create more good jobs and career choices, allow for more business and industry growth, allow for more different types of career choices in Wyoming? Should we make it easier for businesses to grow by making sure that we can solve the things like workforce availability and access to capital that one business just can't solve on their own? Should we build the foundations for future growth, making sure that we have the sites available, the infrastructure available that makes Wyoming a competitive place to grow a company? Should we help communities lead their own economic growth, partnering with them, providing education, providing facilitation? Should we build new industries where Wyoming can compete, taking advantage of things that are really on the precipice of growth in energy and critical minerals, things like that? Or is it something else? Tell us what you think. Which one of these should we do first? I see in the chat, why isn't housing one of these? So making Wyoming a more competitive place to live and work includes housing. Josh, great observation. It is so hard to talk about one of these without talking about all of the others. They are all so interrelated. And we kind of geek out about that a little bit at the Business Council because it's complexity and it makes it really fun to work on. All right. There's a pretty clear winner here. We need to make Wyoming a more competitive place to live and work. Housing, childcare, healthcare. And that's followed by building foundations for future growth. So setting up that those those things that are like infrastructure, those kind of basics that make it easy to grow a business here, making sure that Wyoming is competitive with other states. And that's also followed by helping communities grow their own economies and lead their own economic growth, and really partnering and coaching those communities. Josh and Brandon, does that match with what you have heard around the state?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is key to understand that these are common across the state. And as you mentioned, we geek out about this, but not, the solutions aren't always common across the state, right? The problem on the surface is, and I think that's where these give us a direction, but they don't necessarily tell us the underlying problems. And I think that's the exciting part for all of us, kind of like economy nerds, is to dig into what are the real core problems. And so I think it gives us a direction, and then we got to run at it really hard and understand the underlying challenges.
That's right.
Because it turns out that LaGrange and Rollins don't have the exact same problems under the surface, maybe on the surface, but not under the surface.
That's right. That's absolutely right. All right, let's move on. So, if we are able to work on that, what what would it mean for you if Wyoming makes meaningful progress on your top priorities? So think about what you chose. What difference would it make for you in your life? Feelings again.
All right. Well, while everybody is searching their feelings, you tried to avoid the question of what it was like to grow up in the big city. So Sarah, what was it like growing up in Cheyenne?
Oh man, I loved growing up in Cheyenne. It's just perfect, like my mom grew up in Cheyenne, my dad grew up in Wheatland, and with the two of those that combination, it was just perfect. But Cheyenne's just like the perfect size, it's small enough so that you can be an individual, and it's big enough so that every opportunity is really available to you here. And I loved growing up in Cheyenne. I loved it.
Yeah, that was an okay sales pitch. I'm sticking with Rollins though.
Yeah, yeah. You know what the best or one of my favorite parts of growing up in Cheyenne was going over to UW games. I remember we would risk life and limb to get over the summit during like the 90s when the Pokes were really great at basketball. Oh man, I remember many times when I was a kid just being like, "Yeah, we'll get home probably. It's a blizzard, but we'll probably make it." All right. Okay, well, let's see. All right. Well, if we did solve that top priority, most people say that their community would be stronger and more stable. That's a really important thing. That's a really important thing. And in second place is I would feel more secure about my future here. I've got two little girls, and I think about the future all the time because of them. And it's really hard to think about a great future for them without feeling secure about my future here. And so that to me is just a really, really important thing to think about. Thanks, guys, for sharing your feelings there. All right, let's move on. All right. How much confidence do you have that what you're sharing today will meaningfully shape Wyoming's direction? Do you think uh, how much how much are we going to be able to do with what you're sharing here today?
And Sarah, I think it's important to kind of talk about the gap here. It's the gap about sharing information and then action actually happening. And I think that's what we're trying to understand here is what does that gap look like? And then, ultimately, once we understand what that gap is like, we can work on addressing it, make sure that it's heard.
Absolutely. I think now that I'm reminiscing about going to Cowboys games in the Cowboy basketball games in the 90s, we should have put like who's your favorite 90s basketball player? 90s
Sarah,
Cowboys basketball player?
it's 2026. That was last century.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, who's your favorite Civil War hero, Sarah? She's
Okay. All right. So most people think that what you're saying, yeah, Marcus Bailey, I
Marcus
agree.
Bailey.
I just
Everybody knows that.
had to break from the script there for a second. Bramlett's, uh-huh, yeah, uh-huh. All right. Okay. Well, most people say that what we're talking about today will have some impact on where we go, and that to me, that feels like we've got some work to do, right? We need to make sure that what we're hearing today translates to action. That's our responsibility. All right. Okay, let's move on. There you go. Right later, yeah. All right. What gives you the most confidence in Wyoming's economic future? What makes you feel like we can do this? Is it the people? Is it the strength of our communities? What makes you feel like you can do this? All right. 8 seconds left.
Yeah, these are the last couple polls, and let's sprint through the finish line, everyone. I think that these next couple are super important to really kind of drive home the message we're looking to send.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people, the
Yeah.
people who care about the state. Me too.
Yeah.
That's what gives me hope too.
Yeah.
But some people are not very confident. And so that means those people, we've got to take action.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of taking action, building Wyoming's future will take more than just the business council, as Josh said before. What role could you see yourself playing? We've got a lot of folks saying that they want to join an action team. In our internal conversations, we're like, that's too big of a lift, right? To ask everybody to do. No, it's not. It's not. Everybody wants to get on an action team. That's awesome. Great.
Sarah, watching this one pop is almost as fun as watching our very first one about who's here from where. Watching just
Yeah.
in my head, I'm seeing people saying, "I can do that. I can do that. I can do that."
It's so
So you give a
exciting.
crap, people.
This is truly a Team Wyoming huddle. That's what teams do, right? Yeah. Yeah. This is great. This is great in all of the above. Okay. All right, guys. Well, that makes me super excited. There's work to do. There's work to do. To wrap us up, Josh, can you bring us home?
Yeah, thanks. And Sarah and Brandon, this was a heck of a lot of fun. But I think more importantly, it's been great to hear what you've all said. Just thinking about nearly 500 people getting involved over their lunch hour in the summertime to talk about the economy. It's not just about kind of getting geeked up. It's about just a sense of pride and just the idea that what we're doing matters in the state and what we are doing has great potential. I do believe that what we went through this year is a lot like what Wyoming goes through from time to time, where at least at the beginning of the year, maybe the things looked a little dark. But actually, what happened, I think, was an organization and a state rallied together to say, we can build a future that's different. We can build a future together that creates a place we can all be proud of, that creates opportunities for the next generation, and that creates opportunities for us. And it's interesting. People said the word crossroads a lot when I traveled the state, and when I would sit down in coffee conversations, people would say, I hope Wyoming is for me. I want Wyoming to step boldly into the future. I want us to create a place where future generations can build a life here that they're proud of. But I heard doubt in their minds. Like maybe it wouldn't be possible. Like maybe we would go backwards. I don't believe that. I absolutely don't believe that. I think over the next few weeks and months and years, Wyoming is going to be and reach its full potential of being the business frontier and the place where families can stay together for generations and generations. I think it's going to take hard times. I think it's going to take a lot of work. Thank goodness many of you are willing to plug in and be part of that. But it's not going to be without work and effort. And the work and effort that I want to tell you that personally and with our organization, we will absolutely do is carry these messages to the people who are making decisions in the next few weeks. We will not put this on a shelf and we will not pat ourselves on the back for having 500 people in a webinar. We will take this and we will boldly be honest to those who are making decisions, even at our own peril, because I do not believe that the responsibility of leadership is something we should shirk. I know I won't. I don't mind being in the crosshairs. I don't mind people saying that we are a big stinking waste of money because I know that we have thousands of people across the state who disagree and who are ready to take a hold of our economy and build a future that's bright for all of us. Over the next few weeks, we're going to continue. We'll be in Albany County, we'll be in Sweetwater County, we'll be in Teton County. We will be listening and learning and then carrying that message forward. We'll be making hard choices. We're not going to say yes to everybody. We're not going to say yes to everything, but we are going to keep our eyes on the prize and we're going to speak truth to power and we're going to do what's right for the economy of Wyoming. And I know when I say we, I'm not talking about the Wyoming Business Council. I'm talking about Team Wyoming, which we're all a part of. Thank you.